Dynamic memory is a functionality that's been a part of our Hyper-V environment with our virtual machines since Windows Server 2008, but there's been a pretty substantial upgrade or enhancement of this feature in Server 2012. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So let's talk about configuring dynamic memory. Now, I'm not going to step you through the interface necessarily in this. I'm going to show you a screenshot of it, but I want you to get the concept of all of these things down and go get some hands-on after you watch this video sometime before you go sit this exam. But what I'm trying to stress to you in the course here is to understand how this stuff's working, why you need it, why you want to do it this way. That is the meat and potatoes, Southern technical term for, that's the kind of stuff you're going to get on the exam, questions about how this stuff fits in with the scenario that you're reading. So let's go with dynamic memory here. What is dynamic memory? It is a memory management method that helps virtual machines manage their memory more efficiently. Now, the big push with virtualization is what we'll call consolidation numbers. You'll hear that term out there. And what we're talking about is how many virtual machines can we efficiently consolidate onto a single physical server. And when we've got memory management that's more efficient, then we can put more virtual machines on there. It saves money, it saves time, it saves administrative effort. And again, this was introduced in Windows Server 2008, and it allowed Hyper-V to adjust the RAM that was allocated to virtual machines based on demand. And that was pretty good, but it had a couple of pretty serious limitations as it turned out there in the real world. And the main one is not really a Hyper-V issue, it's the simple fact that Windows operating systems require more memory during startup than during the steady state. When they get up there and they're just kind of flying along straight and level, they just don't need as much memory as when they start it up. But if you don't give an operating system, or specifically a virtual machine, enough physical RAM, restarts will fail. And it won't start up, it'll throw you errors. So you always had to assign enough RAM to the virtual machines for a reliable restart. And keep in mind, this is restarts only, not starting from just a dead cold start, but from restarts only. If you didn't assign enough RAM to the virtual machine, it meant that, memory, the thing wouldn't even start. If you assigned enough, then you lost your reliable restarts. And from time to time, your machines wouldn't restart. Now, that's not a good day in a production environment to restart a server, and it won't start because of memory problems. The real problem was that in Server 2008 R2, you could not reclaim memory from the virtual machines once they started up. So Windows Server 2012 is introducing a new setting in Hyper-V in the dynamic memory section, and that new setting is minimum memory. Now, this allows Hyper-V to reclaim unused memory from the virtual machine because now it knows the floor. It can reclaim up to or down to this much, but it has to leave this certain amount of minimum memory there for the machine to run. And this allows more virtual machines to run efficiently on a single host. Now, this is what it looks like. You'll notice right up here in the dynamic memory section, we've chosen dynamic memory. You can configure the amount of startup RAM, and then you can enable dynamic memory right here, and you can tell it the minimum RAM. This is when everything's flying straight and level, and the maximum RAM this machine gets. You can put a memory buffer on here, and then you can specify how to prioritize the availability of memory for this virtual machine compared to others on this computer. You can go lower or higher and play with that. So this minimum RAM setting, minimum memory, tells Hyper-V how much it can reclaim. Now, what happens if enough memory still isn't available for a virtual machine startup? Face it, at some point, you've just got too many machines, too many resources, and you just don't have the physical RAM that you need. Well, then smart paging is used. And we'll talk about smart paging in a separate video entitled Configuring Smart Paging. So to configure dynamic memory, you want to choose the dynamic memory option on all your VMs, the little checkbox I just demonstrated there. Set the minimum memory for that virtual machine to the stated recommended minimum RAM for whatever operating system is running in that virtual machine. Then set the maximum memory based on whatever your virtual machine load requirements, performance, available RAM, all those sorts of things. And then monitor and adjust that as needed. And just keep in mind here, watch for this on the exam also, you can make changes to the dynamic memory section on that virtual machine, even when it's running. That's a pretty cool feature, but that's kind of the basics, and it'll get you through the woods on configuring dynamic memory.